on. Let me just put on some eyeshadow. I feel like I need to doll myself up a little bit.
Oh,
Besides,
okay.
I'm trying to look a little bit more.
Among others. Her first novel, Control Freak, is forthcoming. And so that was on the left-hand side. AJ, you've co-written two stories with Poppy Z. Brite. How do you know Poppy? Why did you decide to collaborate with her? That was her preferred pronoun at the time. What's your relationship with her? Krista Faust. Poppy and I met in a boy brothel in Thailand in 1936. We found we had a lot in common and decided to take over the world. Okay, so that was Krista. And Krista also came out to my when I signed at Jason X Death Moon at Dark Delicacies and when was that? 2005 with Maria Alexander. And Krista came out to see me, you know. Um, and anyway, so that's Krista Faust, right? And who's an amazing human being, and she was no longer married to David J. Scow. David J. Scow, of course, co-wrote the 1994 film The Crow with John Shirley, who's our mutual friend. Now, on the left-hand side is the right-hand side, excuse me, because I'm dyscalculiac. Dyscalculiac is a story called R.A.P. Um, and it starts out. I'm just going to because I'm republishing this in the forthcoming book, The Junk Merchants 2, a literary tribute to William S. Burroughs, which has a foreword by Larry Jaffe, our friend, who's the co-founder of Poets for a Peace. He's an internationally renowned poet, and his work is collected with the unpublished sections of the autobiography of Malcolm X. And he lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, in where Eileen Mish Murphy lives in Florida at the Jack Kerouac house. And anyway, that's just an aside. So the introduction by Poppy, of course, Billy Martin, and the contributors include, well, our friend Ossiana, who has been contributing a note from a fan. And I like to think of these anthologies as more like newsletters or sort of like a do-it-yourself old-fashioned punk rock, newsletter or something that the kind of thing that Are You Serious might come up with. Only it's high tech now and digital. And anyway, so dear William S. Burroughs, I'll just read a little bit to give you the flavor because this is hot stuff, man. We never met while you were alive, but you shaped my way of thinking about everything from drugs to jism to prose style. I mean, rethinking jism, and that's something else, right? Is it the texture or what? I don't know.
Thin
Uh,
white rope.
White
Thin
Rope.
thin white rope. I think.
That was a
Ro-
band in
yeah, I think that was a Burroughsism originally. I'm not sure, but I think they named themselves after that.
Thin White Rope was a band from Davis, which was my UC
Mm,
Davis, which was my
yeah, we had
alma
them in
mater.
Mondo. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yes, you made me wonder for all time what was on the end of my fork. I assumed you would live forever, pre-embalmed by the drugs. Tonight, you are dead at 83, and I figure the least I can do is pen a fantasy about fucking your corpse. And it goes on in that vein. I'm just looking down here, right-hand corner. Your cock is flaccid and powdery tasting, but as I roll it around on my tongue, a drop of something bitter, like that. Piss or jism? The ultimate orgasm? I don't flatter myself that I'm giving it to you. At best, I'm getting death's sloppy seconds. And
I
then
mean, angel lust is a thing.
what? Oh yeah, man. And so
Beautiful.
anyway, that is and it. contains contributions from, let's see, Caitlin R. Kiernan, John Shirley, John Palisano, Jarbo, um, as in, you know, Jarbo. A guy, I don't know, maybe Ossiana could speak to this, because I know that he wrote some songs, including a song about a dead Hungarian actor, who played Christ in a Hungarian production of the life of Christ, a, a passion play of some kind. But anyway, he was he they made a stage play about this, that was based on this novel by a guy who was a in love with Walt Whitman, and he was a Dublin-born author, Bram Stoker. That's it, Bram Stoker, right? And so they did this stage play in the 1890s of Dracula, and then it was first made into a film by this German expressionist um, director, F.W. Murnau, whose skull was stolen in 2015, I believe, by some occultist, and they used it in a some sort of grim ceremony. And that's literally true. And then the next major production of Dracula was 1931 production that was called Dracula. And so the other one was called Nosferatu, right? And this was called Dracula. And a guy named David J. Haskins was binge watching a lot of movies, like horror movies and particularly vampire movies. And you know, he was working for this as a shipping and handling packer at this, I forget where he lived. It was a sort of a industrial, sort of working class, city in England. And he started to hear this almost like these lyrics uploaded themselves in his head. And those lyrics began famously, how did they begin? Oceana.
I actually don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay,
I don't know which
so
song this is.
it starts out, it's two colors, two colors, white and black, white on white, translucent black capes, back on back,
Oh,
Bela Lugosi's dead,
yep.
right?
Undead, undead,
Undead, undead.
undead.
Right. So this guy, David J. Haskins, is a self-described Burroughs obsessive. And when I contacted him through his website, I had no idea that he would not only respond, but within 2 days, he sent me an original poem called El Hombre Invisible for Joan Vollmer Burroughs. And that was just one of the amazing lineup that we have for the Burroughs book. And the most recent acquisition is a story called Lumina by a woman named Nicole H. as in Sixx. And if that name sounds familiar, you may have heard of a band called Motley Crue. And so, yeah. Anyway, um, now I guess this is not really kind of be formal because I I have I don't know. I call myself neurospicy, right? So I'm neurodivergent, meaning my brain doesn't work like everybody else. Like on the one hand, I can write things that get the get on the radar of people like John Shirley. And I know you're like, you know, you're squeeing over there. But because Oceana is the world's biggest like John Shirley fan. And oh my God, right? Well, I am too, and I think we all are.
Every time, man.
Every time, right? It never loses its value, its charge, right? And so, you know, I and Ellen Mabey and a number of my other friends who are also in the Bauhaus book, like Carmela Voyes, were all who was mildly autistic, and she's the the author of the Starblitz series, and she's very pansexual, very queer. I think you and Carmela would really you know enjoy you know each other's friendship, and and she calls herself my companion animal, my not my companion, my support animal, my support animal, right?
She
Um,
calls herself
yes,
her support animal,
my support animal, like she's my support animal.
or Alex's.
Alex's support animal.
Okay.
So we're going to start out. Um, I'm going to sort of go around and introduce folks, and people can sort of introduce themselves too and fill in the gaps. So I'm going to start with you, Mish Murphy. Mish Murphy is we first made contact, I believe, um, over my disability rights anthology called We Are Gregor, a disability rights anthology,
Yes.
right? And we did a show with Don Kingfisher Campbell,
Yes.
and we had a number of, I think we had Christina Deptula and Ellen Mabey was on the show, and we read some poems by, like, I think Ron Whitehead. We all read Ron Whitehead's poem. We had what's Lynn Bronstein was on the show. Lynn is also in the our forthcoming anthology, which is called Moondust Will Cover You, a literary tribute to um, David Bowie, which you're all obviously invited into, and that also contains the lyrics to The Day That David Bowie Died by David J. and a number of other writers. And and then so I got to be friends with Mish here, and she reviewed my book, The Doom Hippies, and I reviewed her book, Evil Me, which is published by our mutual friend, Juliet Cook, who is also in the Burroughs book. And it's called, so it's Evil Me. And I really want to talk about that, as we're going to circle around to you. So, Mish is an English instructor in, you're in Florida, right? You're in,
Yeah.
where again?
I'm in Tampa.
You're
Tampa.
you're in Tampa, Florida, and you're also a very good artist, and
Dog lover.
you're a dog lover, but you know, like, French and Russian.
Yeah,
And,
I'm a language aficionado.
and she writes some dirty stories, man.
Yeah,
She writes some dirty stories, but they're highfalutin smut, like me.
they are not porn because they
They're
have
not
literary
porn
value.
because they have literary value,
I
I
write
mean,
porn.
right. And I write porn too. I mean, I was in the book Master Slave with Nancy Kilpatrick and Patrick Califia.
And
Okay.
I'll just say I like porn and erotica,
Well,
whichever style you're going for.
I can't. I'm trying to get some book published, so maybe
I
when
mean,
he's ready to talk about it.
I can name drop the site I used to be VP of marketing for, XChat fans. We do have a blogging platform on there that I was actually jockeying for them to expand. Uh, a lot of my modeling photos are also on there. Obviously, I'm that type of model. But like,
If you'll, can you give me a link in the chat, and I
oh
will
yeah, sure.
do
Yeah.
it.
I mean, Oceana and I are two peas in a pod, right? Like, totally. I mean, like you're the other me. It's weird. So okay, so we have Mish Murphy, and then I guess I'll introduce, Oceana is a a journalist, a who works with the adult film industry, is a fetish model, a and might I say, pretty hot and fetching, whatever the term is, and also the founder of Last News on the Left, which I contribute to, as well as my collaborator on, or actually, they created a book called The Rainbow Travel Guide for LGBT and minorities, which came out in 2023, I believe, and they and I are have also we were recently interviewed by our friend Steph Magister of
Hmm.
Queer Voices and Script Magazine, right? Script Magazine, and
Hmm.
and we did, you know, and we're mutual fans, and we're also collaborating on a book called, which all of you are fully welcome to contribute to and collaborate with us. It's called Tales from the Underworld, and it's basically sketchy stories from the demi-monde, to use that John Shirley,
Okay.
you know.
I could I could go for that because I've got
Yes,
details.
sketchy, yeah,
Well,
and
I've lived in the underworld, but people don't know that.
yes,
I don't look like that.
well, yes, you seem to me to be kind of like somebody who would fit in a 1940s noir film, and you would be trouble, when like a Raymond Chandler character is sitting at his desk and he's hard bitten and he's walked those mean streets, and then all of a sudden this gorgeous blonde walks into his office, and he's like, oh shit. Right, and there's going to be shenanigans, so we'll get to you, my friend. um and also I am publishing Ossiana's fiction debut, which is called
E minor.
E minor. So could you tell the people a little bit? We're gonna cycle around back, but could you just like shorthand what E minor is all about?
So this is a heavily fictionalized account of a lot of the stuff that happened in my early 20s mixed in with a little bit more noir,
Right?
and a little bit of crime thriller. And it starts off with a survivor of sex trafficking and her best friend, who also watched everything unfold, escape to New York City, join a gang simply because she needed a place to stay. And then you see her go from like a recipient of a full ride scholarship that was given to her by a nonprofit, talking about how she's going to get out of gang life. And slowly, as the book progresses, she starts quietly accepting life as a gang member. And it just shows this like slow spiral and like how she gets there.
That sounds amazing.
Awesome.
I'm
Mhm.
so proud and honored to be publishing this, because this is your fiction debut and people don't know about you. They know about your work with the adult film industry and the porn stars and all the modeling and blah blah blah. But and we're not going to discount the journalism. I mean, this is how Oceana got on my radar. We're going to circle back to them in a second, but so I'm really looking forward to collaborating with you on these all these projects, and um, our um, our last but certainly not least, we have Ken Goffman, aka Are You Serious, who was one of the progenitors of cyberculture, the co-founder of Mondo 2000 magazine, the founder of is it Reality Hackers or Reality Hacker?
Reality hackers
Reality
or
Hackers,
reality hecklers, if you
Reality
prefer.
Hecklers. Yeah. Hey, you. Hey, Cyberboy. Hey, Mundus will cover you. Um,
Good
and
boy.
what he was a yippie. He was good friends with Timothy Leary, and you worked with Timothy Leary. He was a the Revolutionary Party candidate for president. And I'm really, really curious to hear more about that stuff. In on the ground floor of everything that we live today, the digital landscape that we're embedded in today. You want to talk about the Matrix? Ken was there before anybody. He and a handful of people, Rudy Rucker, John Shirley, William Gibson, um, I know, and Bruce Sterling, of course.
Bruce Sterling.
And so beyond honored to have you on the show, man.
I'm honored to be here amongst all you literary folk.
Literary folk. You don't consider yourself a literary folk?
I'm not sure. I mean, I started off writing poetry and writing fiction, and I went to college for creative writing and majored in fiction writing, and got a tiny little award in upstate New York for a short story called Glib Little Holocaust. And then I started working on a book called Dr. Fuck, or the Humorous Permutations of Human Flesh and Blood in the DNA Age, at the end of the 70s, beginning of 80s. And then I got infected by Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson and a really strong LSD trip. At which point I moved from upstate New York to California to start the neo-psychedelic movement. So I got perverted away yeah, from my fictional kind of work. I mean, my favorite thing now is writing lyrics, because I find that if I'm writing text, I have to explain stuff. And I get really exhausted having to explain stuff and having to find facts to back up what I'm trying to say. Whereas if I write lyrics, even if people want to know what they mean, I mean, they can always refer back to Bob Dylan and say, well, no, you don't tell people what your lyrics mean.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And something about asking the weatherman which way the wind is blowing, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
I-
You share that with our mutual friend John Shirley. I mean, writing lyrics, and I
Oh, yeah.
Shirley's some of his lyrics for Blue Oyster Cult, because he
Yeah.
also has what is it, the Panther Moderns, right?
Hmm.
And
His
some other
current thing, what do they call them? Geezers, I think. Are they the geezers?
geezers, yeah, the geezers. Wow. Yeah. And he um yeah, so his lyrics, particularly like the Old Gods Return from the Walk on Stilts album,
Hmm.
what was a big influence on my writing. And I actually the poem from my book The Flowers of Doom, which it's a sort of almost like, you don't know, it's a kind of a worm Ouroboros situation, because I don't know where I begin and John Shirley ends, and then Pat Cadigan begins, and then Nancy Kilpatrick ends, and then Christa Faust begins, and then William
Well, surely you have
King,
some idea, actually.
Shirley. I see what you did there. And so yeah, so I'm really like I just got turned on to your songs, Ken. Um and so I'm really, really curious. One of the things that I've been curious about is you were one of the first people, you and like people like Howard Rheingold and you were
John Barlow,
Tom Barlow, right?
uh, Timothy
Um
Leary,
and
all the culprits who
all the culprits,
sucked
right,
everybody into this nightmare.
into this. Okay, so that is, we are living in a kind of a
Are you
we're
talking about the politics?
well,
Yeah,
that is part of
dystopia.
it, definitely. I mean, because the digital platforms have been weaponized against all of us.
Yeah.
And the premise of the Matrix, of course, is that this this whole thing is very much of a, what began as a promise became an omen,
Hmm.
and could you speak, Ken, to your initial wide-eyed acceptance of AI and cyberculture, and then
Oh,
how it
interesting.
may have turned?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to endorse the idea that we were too wide-eyed because we always included lots of dystopian uh, potentials and possibilities in what we
Yeah,
were talking about. And of course, Mondo was mixed in with the cyberpunk writers. And that was largely a critique of the what might happen within the matrix, within the idea that we're going to take technology into us under the sign of capitalism. So that was all there in the early 90s. And then at the same time, I mean, there was this feeling that the internet, uh, that we were capturing the means of communication, and that the internet was this really wide open space and everybody could be their own broadcast studio, their own webzine, their own whatever. And that was the idealistic idea. And then there was also ideas like you couldn't have censorship on the internet. John Gilmore, famous cypherpunk, said that the internet uh, interprets censorship as an error and roots around it, which
I
turned out to be largely bullshit.
wish that was
Um,
true.
and there was the idea that because this was a space where everything could be easily accessed and easily uh, copied, that it should be impossible to monetize, which I mean is the biggest bullshit of it all, right? I mean,
Right.
that has just exploded a million times. Uh, I mean, it goes back to the Free Software Foundation, but they saw that the capitalists, the ownership was going to make problems and was not going to lead to this utopian situation. I think basically what happened in a nutshell is the internet got privatized. I mean, not technically. Technically, it's still, you don't go on the internet and pay a fee to a company to put up your own webzine or do whatever it is you want to do outside of the siren servers like Facebook or Google as a search engine
Right.
or what have you, or sell what you need to sell on Amazon.
Right.
These ruling class feudal estates,
Yeah.
but more or less what happened was they created really convenient, useful apps. And Facebook was just a really good app,
Yeah.
and Google was a really good app, and Amazon was a pretty good app, and everybody just went there. And they did this whole process of what Cory Doctorow has identified as enshittification, which is first you're really nice and you get your customers in, you treat them really good, you give them bargains, you undersell uh, other uh, people who are trying to offer products. You
Yeah.
actually uh, even take losses at first, and once you got everybody in, you get together with the businesses and you start treating the customers shitty, and then you start treating the businesses shitty, and you have so dominated the market that everybody has to work through you, and you can tell people what to do, and how to do it in order to be able to reach a consumer base. And so Amazon has done that. Apple has done that. Google through Google Play has done that. And to an extent, YouTube does that, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we ended up. I don't think it was a grand conspiracy. I think people stumbled into it. And I mean the most brutal person was what's his name? The guy who owns Amazon. He was the one who really operated originally in a really harsh manner.
Right.
And the other guys, as rent-seeking, profit-making organizations, eventually followed suit. I mean, Google said, "Don't be evil," and that decayed. That decayed within a few years. Once they went public, it was pretty much that was over. Don't be evil doesn't scale. So that was the end of that.
Yeah. You and so could you talk about your relationship with Timothy Leary?
Yeah. I mean, Tim inspired what became High Frontiers and then Reality Hackers and then Mondo 2000 as a little freak in the late 70s, early 80s who was pretty much into punk and that kind of thing. Kind of, some basic, not too well thought out nihilism. But then at the same time, I was digging the writing of Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson. So they kind of tuned me into this other idea, which was kind of proto-transhumanism, really. The idea that you could reinterpret the hopes for utopia that had emerged in the 1960s. And I have really strong memories of seeing the Living Theater in Ithaca, New York, and their demands for Paradise Now. And all that stuff had rather dissipated by
Yeah.
the late 1970s. And Leary came along and said, no, it's a science project.
Mhm.
So we're still doing Paradise Now, but it's a science project. And we can hack reality and we can hack consciousness and the idea during the 60s there was the influential poem The Machines of Loving Grace
Sure.
by Richard Brautigan.
Yes.
And Leary was kind of saying we can do this and we can not only hack wealth so that we can have a post-scarcity world, but we can end scarcity of space and time by moving in space and embracing longevity, hyper longevity.
Right.
And that became sort of the transhumanist thing that now is dominated by fascist, techno fascists,
Right.
because I think you have to have an awful lot of fucking money to pursue that. So, that's I got
Well,
rather.
are you, you and I might be contemporaries
We
because I
are,
was going to college in about 69, 70, 71.
yeah.
And I'm really sad that these ideals aren't still out there.
Mhm.
Wait, I thought that you were like 20 years older than me, Mish.
What?
I thought that you were like 20 years older than me. I was like, man, she could tell me all the stories about partying in the 80s at nightclubs.
Well, I was.
Okay,
Did that
okay.
too.
But I went to college in about 1970, 71.
Yeah.
And,
Where were you?
What?
Where were you?
New College, Sarasota.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It didn't have any grades or
Yeah.
program, but then the state bought it and then it was all over eventually. But it was nice while I attended it. But back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
Are the ideals from back then I guess I've never let go of them, but there just seems hopeless, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about, you were referencing reality hacking, and I first I wasn't aware of your reality hackers. What I was aware of is a very early draft of Exquisite Corpse by Poppy, um, was had the concept of reality hacking in it.
Hmm.
And so I read that because it was there was an anthology of just the writers who were part of the World Horror Convention in
Yeah.
Atlanta, Georgia in 1995.
Yeah.
And and there's an excerpt from an early draft of Exquisite Corpse in there, and it had the whole, at that point Poppy was working on the premise that these that her famous sort of gutter punks and vampires and would have you, um, were all kind of, who are many of them were kind of doppelgangers for Bauhaus basically, and which is something that he's admitted to, actually in the forward to the Bauhaus tribute which he just put out. But um, so so that had the whole concept of like, you
The
know,
band Bauhaus or the movement Bauhaus or both?
well,
Okay.
it is. I'll just show it to you.
Uh,
Um, so yeah, my dad
oh,
studied
so cool.
at Yale, thank you,
Thank
with
you.
um with Joseph Albers, who was the founder of the Bauhaus, the art movement, and famously David Haskins, admits to just blatantly stealing the Bauhaus logo and the name Bauhaus from Bauhaus, the art and design movement. And actually, he's talked about the fact that he got a call from the lawyer for Bauhaus, who's he also stole Love and Rockets from the Los Bros Hernández. But he's just a
Oh
black
no.
pilferer of stuff, you know. Not only that, but Bauhaus stole uh, the main riff for one of their songs from Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath. People think that Black Sabbath,
You got to steal. I mean,
you gotta
stealing is
feel, man,
very important to the
but they're
creative
not,
process.
um,
At least he had good taste with what he stole.
That's
right.
right.
And
Yeah.
so I say Bauhaus logo stolen from Bauhaus,
Cool.
which is
Oh
true.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I ripped off the thieves, and
Well,
so
not if you give credit. I don't know if, however, if copyright laws allow. At least you're not plagiarizing.
at least I'm not plagiarizing. Um, right. And so, yeah, it starts out Small Talk Stinks, a forward by Poppy Z. Brite. And
Mhm.
I'll just read a paragraph here. When it comes to Bauhaus, everyone knows Bela Lugosi's dead, right? They should know it. It's the anthem of the goth subculture, if such a thing exists. Kevin Haskins' first skeletal drum beats. David J's ominous, and shout out to David J. Haskins, by the way. I waited 40 years to say that. David J's ominous doom, doom, doom bass line. That
Mm.
opening has launched 100,000 arms in the air dances in smoky midnight clubs, 100,000 clove flavored makeout sessions. Even now, the extended dance mix is still playing somewhere. Poppy Z. Brite, Billy Martin. And I'll just I'll just show you the the table of contents is beyond, it takes my breath away. And I put it together. A note from a fan by Ossiana Tepfenhart. 5 poems by Eliana Vanessa, Untitled by John Compton, who's a beat poet down in Kentucky, who's so he calls himself a gay poet from Kentucky. I think he's from Kentucky. I know a lot of Kentucky poets. man, there's some Kentucky poets down there. Um, Well Lived in Haiku by our brilliant friend Ellen Mabey, um, who's kind of like a beyond. I'm shout out to Ellen Mabey. We'll get to that. The Lonely Voyeur by Jarbo Devereaux. Of course, Lagartija Nick by our friend Aaliyah Celeste Williams, aka Pickles. She had an emergency, so she couldn't be here. She apologizes for that. Gone to Ground by Amelia Mangan, who's an author in Australia, and Rosengarten of the Caged by a certain Mish Murphy. And we have Hope and the Maiden by my Jason X collaborator and with Pat Cadigan, Nancy Kilpatrick, who thanked me for involving her in yet another one of my publishing ventures. I'm like, no, that was New Line Cinema. Okay, that was, you know, we have Til Kumari Sharma, who's in Nepal, Nilay Niloy Rufik, I believe, in Bangladesh. Um, Four poems by Tajala Qureshi. Fame Doesn't Help by Susan Kaplan Olmsted, who's the wife of Mark Olmsted, who is the renowned, um, I guess, I consider he and I to be part of, well, I'm sort of considered the new generation Beats, but he was close friend of Allen Ginsberg for many, many, many years. Um, and he and Richard Modiano, um, and Amelie Frank and Rick Lupert and Brendan Constantine did this. She and Mark and whatever um, did this event called Dear Bela, which is where they it's almost had a seance like thing at Bela Lugosi's last residence in West Hollywood, and they got together and they played Bela Lugosi's Dead, right? And they wrote and they played Dracula with the sound off, and then they were inspired by the spirit of they were, I would say, infused with the spirit of Bela, right? And so, and Rick Lupert is in this book, Richard Modiano. Richard Modiano was the emeritus executive director of Beyond Baroque, which is the world-renowned literary venue in Venice Beach, which I've read at the invitation of Richard, and also with the with also with the I have the very, very great honor of being close friends with Ellen Mabey, who's also in the book. Um, what can I say? I mean, she was at that time she worked at the bookstore. This is of Beyond Baroque. This is 2012. The woman who had her the job before was a huge fan of hers and known to the world as Exene Cervenka. Her name's Exene Cervenkova originally, who she and her then husband, well, now then she was married to Viggo Mortensen, and then they divorced. But they famously met at Beyond Baroque. And so I was, mentored by Ellen Mabey and Richard, and then, you know, Amanda Gorman, the youth, poet laureate of the United States, got her start at Beyond Baroque as well. So I'm very, very privileged and fortunate to be, you know, friends with these people. Um, and we're going to have Richard and Mark and Amelie Frank and K.R. Morrison on the show on the 15th. So please tune in for that. And so going down the list, I'll just summarize real quick because I want to get back to talking with I want to move to Mish, but I just want to just give people the flavor because this is available in on Kindle, on paperback, and in special edition hardcover with 4 additional stories, including myself. Um, and it's all to benefit Sweet Relief Musicians Fund because, you know, people have, people move on and people don't have any attention span these days. But, you know, the devastating wildfires in LA, they will take years and years and years to recover from. So it's not over just because they had the show with Gaga and Stevie Wonder and all that. It doesn't mean that they're not still recovering. The recovery work has barely begun. You know, these were horrific, horrific fires. I mean, I think I was thinking of like the fire, the of like Dresden. That's what it reminded me of, Dresden. Um, so we have Rats Live on No Evil Star, which is by um, a woman named Caitlin R. Kiernan, who the New York Times um, called one of our essential writers of dark fiction.
Okay, Alex, is
Yes,
that from Bauhaus?
it's from the Bauhaus
Okay.
literary
Yeah,
theater.
Rats Live on No Evil Star is a one of those ones that's back and forth. It reads the same.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then um Anne Sexton was big on Rats Live on No Evil Star.
Of course, because we're all, Caitlin is considered a national treasure in Ireland, right? They're
Yeah.
originally from Ireland. They're born in Ireland, and they now live in Alabama. And they're also, besides writing like best-selling fiction and dark fiction and fantasy and science fiction and weird fiction, they also, they're you know a vertebrate paleontologist at the University of Alabama, and they're a biology professor, and Caitlin has IQ is Einstein's IQ. Okay. I think they're a little bit smarter than Einstein. And we have
Mhm.
Bela Lugosi's Accomplishments by Richard Mariano. Again, it's a beautiful, beautiful man. I love him a lot, and we're going to have him on the show on the 15th. Composed Beauty by Niloy Rafik. I'm just going to give you a little flavor of just the table of contents. This has never been done before. This combination of like rock stars, beat poets, beat adjacent people, Mish Murphy, having Ossiana on board, legendary. I mean, it's never been done before. Death, My Love is the next one. These are 98% originals pieces, right? Death, My Love by a woman named Tara Vanflower. If that doesn't ring a bell, you may have heard of a little band called Lycia. Okay, Lycia, right? And Tara is a good friend of mine, joined Lycia when she fell in love with Mike Van Portfleet, who was the founder of Lycia. And we have a show up. We did a show with her, and Alexander Honigsberg is also in the book. Death, My Love by Tara Vanflower. Um, she's really down to earth kind of gal, and she doesn't make a big deal of herself, but her fans include Trent Reznor, according to Vice magazine. So that's just an original piece. The Passion of Lovers by our friend Seb Dubinsky, who's he's a renowned science fiction author, the author of the City State um, trilogy. Um, good friend. He teaches at a university in Denmark. And shout out to Seb Dubinsky. He's also translating my book, The Flowers of Doom, into French. And this is The Passion of Lovers. Again, it's an original poem in French and English. She's in Parties by myself, and it's dedicated to my late great friend Jordan Gallagher, who was a poet. She was a muse. She was the inspiration for the character Jordan Cochran in the movie Real Genius. She taught at Cal State LA and as well as UCLA with her friend, the late great Kate Braverman. Okay. And so this anthology is dedicated to her. She also co-edited my book that I put out in 2017. It was a anthem, a tribute to Leonard Cohen. Um, photo Wild Nights in Little Italy by Sandy DeLuca, and I'll just skip through the do. Sandy DeLuca is co-authored this book called Thunderstruck, a dark poetry collection, which I also did with her and the great Aaliyah Celeste Williams, who's aka Pickles, who isn't here with us. We got a rave review in Cemetery Dance magazine. That's pretty good. Gonna skip on through the do to okay, North of No North was an original poem slash song lyric by the woman who founded a little band called the Runaways and wrote some songs you may have heard of, such as California Paradise, um, and Waiting for the Night, and you know, Secrets, right? And she basically invented punk rock at the age of 14. Shout out to Carrie Lee Chrome. That's an original, right? Never been done before. Triggering by John Shirley. The Turning by John Palisano. That's an original story by John Palisano, who's a Bram Stoker award-winning author. And then we're going through the list here. Carmela Voyes, Ethan Marolis from the bands Spawn Ranch and Black Tape for a Blue Girl, among many others. That's an original piece. And Hungarian Haiku by the renowned Emily Frank. Christopher R. Gautier wrote New Year's Eve and the Ghost of Bela Lugosi, which he won. He's an expert on Bela Lugosi, and he won the Rondo Hutton Horror Award. When I first saw Bauhaus by Rick Lupert, who runs the Cobalt Poetry series, Ma Yongbo, who is again is a internationally renowned poet, collaborator with me. He's a professor at the University of Nanking, and he is one of the world's um, foremost poets. Dear friend of mine, and so those are just a few. I didn't read the whole table of contents, so I'm just beyond honored and this is officially endorsed by David J. Haskins, who also contributed to the forthcoming William S. Burroughs tribute anthology, which is next. So um, now let's see. So okay, so I wanted to I wanted to talk to I wanted to ask Ossiana, like, because you work on digital platforms, you also work on in print, and we're going to be putting out several books as collaborations, and your book E minor, your novel E minor. So we've talked about the fact that AI has initially, or AI, cyberculture, digital, you know, initially it seemed to have so much promise, but the warning signs, as Ken has, has said, and I agree, so I will kind of um, put a caveat in there that yes, I mean people like Gibson and Shirley and Rucker and earlier on we had Philip K. Dick and William Burroughs. Certainly, they foreshadowed the dystopian elements of cyberpunk. But do you think that there's any potential to weaponize um, AI and VR and digital platforms for justice and peace?
So I actually was talking with a friend of mine by the name of Ben Karak about that because he and I like we're kind of on the same page politically, which is we really don't like anything that the Russian compromised party currently is doing to the U.S. And we've like we both grew up in the same area, which not exactly the most left-leaning part of Jersey. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we were looking at it and we noticed that a lot of the stuff that the Ruskies and all these troll farms were doing, we could theoretically do similar except backwards with enough bot farms. Just have people try to calm people down, have people use the or have bots use the Socratic method to help people deconstruct a lot of the conspiracies and a lot
Yes.
of the misinformation that they had. But I think that the bigger issue here is while AI is absolutely being weaponized, and it's slugging the crap out of this country.
Right.
Like, not even, no cap. Um, the bigger question is not whether or not we can do it, but we need to figure out what the source of all this is. It's not necessarily just figuring out how to combat it. Why is it so alluring to people to figure out
Thank you.
why this one group is so much of a threat? Why do they need to? Why does the idea of this whole QAnon thing where they're having, pedophile circles or whatever it is,
Yeah.
why is that so alluring to them that they keep doom scrolling? And I speak about this as somebody who was trafficked. Like some of the assumptions that they have about trafficking are so off base, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
But when I actually tell them this, and I'm like, listen, man, it happened to me, they will literally have their eyes glaze over and accuse me of lying.
Well, it's a psyop is really what it is. And by the by the Russian government, it's I mean, QAnon
Oh,
is a
yeah.
psyop. Yeah, obviously.
And I want to find out what makes it so addictive. And if we can come up with a better pill that is more addictive than that, because whatever is going on in
Right.
their life, clearly they're not adjusting well.
So an alternative to like have you read Hegel? Right.
I have not.
Okay. Ken Mish.
I just wanted to
No,
say I just took
I
this
read about
class.
Hegel.
Right.
I just took
Okay.
this class in AI as
Yeah.
for my school
Right.
because teaching composition and all these students are turning in AI generated essays,
Sure.
100% gen.
Oh, Jesus.
Uh,
So I learned a lot more about Gen AI.
In Hegel, he talks about, so this is kind of referring to the famous blue pill, red pill, binary that was presented in the Matrix, right? Um, I propose another pill, which is transcendental and and you know and kind of jacks out of the whole binary of like, reality versus um, you know, the Matrix, because I think that we're more sophisticated now than we were. And then, the Matrix was 1999. That was a product of then. We're living in the Matrix now. And so Caitlin Kiernan wrote a retro cyberpunk story. Well, actually, that was it was a republication, but it's a deep cut from Caitlin for the Burroughs book, um, and called Ballad of a Catamite Revolver. And so, really, I think a lot of people now, or the baby goths or the baby industrial, whatever, people kind of, we sort of, we embrace cyberpunk because it's sort of nostalgic of our youth, and it blows my mind that there were people who were just who weren't even who were just conceived around the millennials. The existence of the millennials blows my mind. But there is a kind of a really a strong, I think, okay, the passion of lovers, right? The passion of lovers is for death, right? Freud talked about this. Thanatos. Why is why do we doom scroll? Right? Why do I like many of my books have the word doom in it? Um, because there's a certain, not even fatalistic attraction, but it's kind of built into the fact that we are mortal and not more human than human. We are decomposing rapidly, right? We're born to die. So that is something that people like Martin Heidegger talk about. What is our disposition to death? And I think that death, the fact of death summons up the organism's last gasp response, which is sex, right? I want to fuck as much as possible. I want to fuck in as many ingenious ways as possible, using whatever implements I can design or imagine. And I've certainly contributed to the literature.
I didn't anticipate that, Alex.
No, you did not. Few do. Well, in the words of Poppy Z. Brite, rest in perversion. Shout out to
I
Bill.
think we said the only excuse for embodiment was sex, because that was
Yeah,
a
man.
Mondo meme.
So let's just talk about sex, because
All right.
I mean, it's a subject that most are interested in whatever their disposition. I mean, it's how we got here. And Mish has written some streamer stuff. In fact, that was how you got on my radar with your poem about the pirates.
Yeah.
That was like a little bit,
It woke you up, huh?
it was a little bit kinky. I mean, you
No,
got
it was.
yeah, come on. Come on.
Not compared to Ossiana.
Well, okay, so how do you mean? What are you implying about Oceana?
Well, it was totally clean.
That's true. It didn't have any explicit, naughtiness
Wasn't
or
explicit,
parts in
just
it.
innuendos.
Okay, so so
You
so
want me to tell
I
it
mean,
again?
yeah, I mean,
Alex, you've read my stuff. You know it gets very explicit and very
oh yeah.
Well, this isn't one of my explicit ones, but Alex liked it. It just somehow, woke him up
It spoke to
out of
me.
his snooze with the rest of the poems at the reading.
Oh, that's not, I mean,
Not that they were bad.
not that they were mad at all. In fact, I mean,
Something about I dreamed. This is a dream about you.
yeah.
Last night I dreamed about you, but it didn't look like you, but I knew it was you. You were a pirate, not one of those dirty ones, but you were a gentlemanly pirate with white teeth and the cleanest fingernails. You had tied me to the mast with ropes really tight, and I was hoping you were going to ravish me.
Mhm.
And I thought you had a tattoo of me and you on your hand. I looked for it. It wasn't there. Then the scene changed to a backyard picnic, barbecue. I looked for you and you walked off with your wine looking for your wife. Finally, I was in my dorm room with my boyfriend. We were on a swivel chair. We were going, wee, 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 swivel chair.
Swivel
It's
chair,
so much fun.
swivel chair.
Yeah. But suddenly I heard these sirens in the background. Fire. Fire. And then someone said, put it out. Put it out.
Damn.
That's it.
That's it. Wow.
Pretty.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to do the
Good.
finger snap because I find that odious.
But I'll have to be honest with you, Alex. I got divorced
Yeah.
and I've been dating different people. And some somewhat successful, somewhat not. Nothing really wonderful. And I've been writing little flash fictions about the different people I've met.
Oh, wow. Cool. Another friend of ours who's also in the Burroughs book is a woman named Alexis Roan Fancher, and I'm going to give a shout
Oh
out.
yeah,
Fancher.
she's a like a we're like us. She's a close friend of mine.
Yeah, we had her on the show with Catfish McDarris, and I also want to mention I have to shout out to Catfish McDarris. Catfish McDarris brought me into this book called Prying, which is put out by Newington Blue Press in Germany, and it's the second edition of this book that Catfish put together back in the day with Jack Micheline and Charles Bukowski. And it also contains, besides myself, it's got Neely Cherkowski, the late great Neely Cherkowski, Neely Cherry, and then and Alexis is also in this book, and and it's about 22 people. But I'm so beyond honored to be in this book with literal fucking Charles Bukowski. And Alexis Roan Fancher and Neely Cherkowski. It just blows my mind.
Well, Alexis is super, and she just keeps going.
She
She's
does keep
wonderful.
going. Yeah.
That's
So
hardcore, though.
that's hardcore.
What?
That's
Alexis?
hardcore.
Pardon?
Well, about the Charles Bukowski, and I've also heard of Alexis, and I'm like, dude, this is all pretty hardcore stuff.
Well, Alexis was the Cultural Daily poetry editor when I was the assistant. So we were working like this all the time for a long time.
Lucky.
So she taught me so much. She was the one that told me, you can't namby-pamby around those bad words in your poems. Just come out and say fuck.
Right.
And that was a while back.
Yeah,
Well, I
go
practice saying it at least 15 times a day.
ahead.
I'm very good at it.
Well, it just wasn't fuck. That wasn't one of my problems, but
Yeah, I have enormous respect for her because like she's one of the few people like I've terrified people with my like just like my story for Master Slave, which I'm in with Patrick Califia. Like like people have thought, and I had this sort of long distance relationship with this woman in Virginia Beach who was a romance writer and also a BDSM romance author under Violet Hart. What a great name for BDSM erotica writer, Violet Hart. And she was terrified. She thought I was like gonna like, you know, I don't know, just beat her up or something, or just like that I was a terrible person because I wrote this story. And I was like, well, you write this stuff, but she said, oh no, it's BDSM romance. I'm just like,
romance. I don't write romance.
I said, I don't write. This is not, I wrote for a particular audience. It was people who were into BDSM, and oh my gosh, screams. Oh dear. So yeah, and I was like, it's fiction first. Also, have you never read a book called L'Image by Jean de Berg or the story of O? Like, and you call yourself a BDSM erotica writer? Just my neighbor got startled by a deer. That's Ossiana said in the chat. So it's like, and then I mean, she thought that a mild spanking that was like that was, you know, that she was a kink, whatever. And God bless her, but I don't know, man. It's like I'm not scary at all. That's why I call myself the small bear. You want to hear you want to hear the origin story of the small bear?
Yes, I love this
Sure.
story.
Okay, so um because this is wild. I mean, there's so many amazing coincidences and synchronicities in my life. Now I'm not so sure that they were. Okay, so when my dad was growing up in the well, he's in his 86, he's 86 right now. His name is Stephen M. Johnson. He was one of the early, he was in on the ground floor of Coevolution Quarterly, Whole Earth Review, whatever you want to call it. Stuart Brand, right? It was a spinoff from Whole Earth Catalog. He and Gary Snyder, Allen Ginsberg, um, Bruce Sterling, John Shirley, I believe, was part of that, right?
I wrote a few things for them.
Yeah, Brian Eno, um, Ginsberg, I think I mentioned, and Gregory Corso was in there, legend, R. Crumb. And so, but when he was growing up, one of his best friends was a guy named um, Michael Ritchie. Now, Michael Ritchie may not ring a bell. You may have heard of a movie called The Bad News Bears. He directed that. He also directed The Candidate with Robert Redford. Um, my parents, my mom was in eighth grade in her home econ class. She was well, not lab partners, but sort of partners with a girl named Gracie Wing, who later married their neighbor Jerry Slick, who was this kind of awkward, kind of dorky looking, redhead, um, who was their next door neighbor, right? And and became Grace Slick. My parents both went to Palo Alto High School with Joan Baez, and she would come out and she would do these like her Bob Dylan impressions, right? And so my dad went to Yale University. He also went to UC Berkeley, graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in journalism, and his one of his teachers was the guy was in the architectural critic Ellen Tempko, who was one of the characters in On the Road, right? And my this guy thought that my dad was he was one of his favorite students, and he blurred one of his books. And so my mom went to Penn, and she graduated in architectural science. And she was working after she graduated. She was working for Cal State San Francisco in the film ordering department, which is when she first saw a film called The Language of Faces by a guy named John Cordy. Now, John Cordy subsequently married Beulah Chang, who's still around. Beulah Chang is still around. She's in Mill Valley, and she's an artist. And I was just recently in contact with her. Now, John Cordy, among other things, was worked with some people. You may have heard these names: George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola. And he's actually, there's an article from Lucasfilm, which honors him, and our viewers can look that up, because Cordy was the one who came up with the idea of having a mobile film studio where you didn't have to be limited to, a set. You could travel around the world, which is how we got Apocalypse Now, and basically American Zoetrope. He came up with that. He came up with American Zoetrope. He also directed a film called um, an um, an Ewok Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Adventure. When I was born, several people sent me teddy bears. Among them, which is an Ewok Adventure, Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Adventure, which was based on a story by George Lucas. It was produced by Lucasfilm, and it was the first, long before The Mandalorian. Right, the Rolls Royce of Bears, exactly. Long before The Mandalorian. This was in 1982, the same year that Return of the Jedi came out. By the way, we have one of our contributing authors is Tim Dry, who was in Return of the Jedi. Shout out to Tim Dry in England. So we have so we had John Cordy, and he and his wife Beulah Chang sent me a Steiff teddy bear, which is directly points, not this one, but this is a reproduction, but sent me a Steiff teddy bear, which is like, for those of you who don't know what a Steiff teddy bear is, it's basically like the Rolls Royce of teddy bears. Like they go for like upwards of like $500 these days. And I was when I was a kid, because I'm an only child, so I thought I was a king, I thought I was the king of the bears. And so that is the origin story of the Small Bear Show and the Small Bear Review. Currently open for submissions as well as Nocturnicorn Books. And we're doing many anthologies, but we're going to kind of come back to uh, uh, to Ken. So now you're a songwriter. How did you get into writing music, and I'm really excited by like we're doing some collaborations with you and Aaliyah Pickles. So how did you get into songwriting?
Hmm. Uh, Started in the early 70s. Just lyrics would pop into my head and I would find people to collaborate with. I got music played on local radio stations, which was exciting for me. Didn't perform uh, publicly that often. In the early 80s, I was in a band in Rochester, New York called Party Dogs. And I guess we were the second most popular band at the New Wave Club Scourges. Uh, we were the closest thing to hardcore punk before hardcore punk happened. But we were also doing David Bowie and Rolling Stones songs sincerely. So we weren't that hardcore after all. I mean, we're doing Sex Pistols and lots of Stooges as well. But anyway, I wrote lyrics for them, and that was the first time I was kind of out in public. Uh, and we recorded about 30 minutes of music. There was one person at that time in the early 80s running one indie label, and they were going to put out one band. And they liked our album better, but another band called New Math that was more popular.
Mhm.
He went with New Math, and that's when I moved to California.
Wow.
So then I tried to uh, exploit my relative celebrity with Mondo 2000 by starting another band because I was far more interested in doing that uh, than being a magazine editor. So I wasn't glamorous enough or something.
Uh-huh.
So I started Mondo Vanilli,
Oh,
uh, which was a response to the great Milli Vanilli lip syncing crisis of 1991 or whatever it was, 1990, 1991. And it was revealed that they lip synced at the Grammys. They had won a Grammy, which I mean, the scandal should have been that it won a Grammy, the song. But the scandal was that they lip synced the song and that they hadn't really uh, recorded the song. Somebody had found some handsome looking fellows to represent what it was that they were selling to the
To
public
be
in turn.
fair, they were very hot.
They were.
thank you.
And I
And
think the
let's
guy
just face it,
committed suicide or tried to
Yeah,
commit suicide.
he
yeah.
did.
Yeah, that's sad. But we were making fun of them before he tried to commit suicide. So
Don't worry,
that
Bruno,
that's
Sacha
fair.
Baron Cohen made fun of them after with the ghosts of Milli Vanilli.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. So anyway, I mean, this was when we were in the middle of of the virtual reality kick. And so the whole notion of being upset about a band not being real seemed silly to us. And we decided to start a completely fraudulent band called Mondo Vanilli that would never perform live. And there was a debate about whether we should actually do music, whether it was selling out the virtualness of the concept by actually feeding it with content. And so there was an argument about whether there should be content.
Oh, I love
And
that.
there was an argument that all music was copied. I can't remember. That was a little obscure. But, I love to write lyrics. And my friend Dave Fleminger, who used the name Scrappy Duchamp, liked to do music. So we put an album
I
together.
love you, man.
Yeah, called IOU Babe. We were signed by Nothing Records, which was Trent Reznor's kind of boutique label that was given to him by Interscope Records. And he signed 6 different musical acts. We were one of the 6. So we did this album called IOU Babe. Um, and then it never got released. Nothing Records was true to its name. Nothing happened. Nothing was delivered. It was a good album. It's online now on my Bandcamp and actually in a few more commercial locations as well. But so I just went on from there. I've been doing new stuff, and I'm just getting ready to release an album. I'm not even quite sure whether it's going to be released by a label or just tossed out there. But it's with a band called Friends, Phrindz, and it's Are You Serious Friends album. It's called The Smarter Kings of Deliria, and hopefully people will be hearing that in about a week and a half. So I think it's maybe the best thing I've done,
Wow.
but I guess other people will have to be the judge of that.
There's a couple of things I wanted to just reference because, um, so obviously for anybody who's into, this kind of music, so Trent Reznor, I have a couple of connections with Trent Reznor. So, okay, so, Mish, you have to go or,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
no, no worries. Okay, we always have this. We're going to continue with me and Ken and Oceana, but we have this kind of I guess ritual. We're not a cult, by the way. This is
Oh,
well,
good.
well, we might be. We're actually sometimes I say we are the Illuminati conspiracy they warned you about. And if people needed any evidence, we have literal "Are you serious?" in the house, right?
Well, I am starting the Kingdom of Deliria, and
Yes.
it's going to be in the Gulf of Deliria.
So
Hit me with an invite, man. I've been delirious for the past 20 years.
You got it. You're in.
nice. And so
Minister of Culture.
Minister of Culture. Oh my God,
Minister of,
this is historic. So we do a kind of a ritual thing called it's a squeezins, a squeezy hug. And I'll bring in the bear, small bear. So basically, you know, and it's
Like
just
that?
yeah, it's just like that, and we love you lots, Mish, and you're welcome to submit anything at any time.
Thank you.
Small Bear Review, Nocturnicorn Books, David Bowie, whatever.
Doors.
Lucky Made Doors. Yeah, whatever you like. We're doing Dominion, a literary tribute to Sisters of Mercy. And if you like that kind of thing, man,
Oh, I could write so much about Sisters of Mercy. I
okay.
like older sexual awakening happened with a certain eldritch individual.
Yes.
eh,
And
Wonderful.
And of course, like I'm, you know, I'm after. Well, Kiernan just released like what was it Black Dead Star or something like that. So I think the time has come to approach Caitlin once again and say, I know you're, literary goddess Caitlin or Kiernan, shout out, but could you write me like something just, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily even have to be a story. It's just like, you know, I'm thinking of asking Kate if they would write me a forward to to the Sisters of Mercy because, they literally,
Oh,
you know, named their first best of. It's called, Two Worlds in Between, right? So that is okay. Huge respect for Caitlin R. Kiernan. So okay, and we'll have you back. Love you,
thanks.
Mish.
Good meeting you.
Wonderful. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
I'll be in touch, guys. RU and Ossiana.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, so it's just us. It's like we are the power trio now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what should we do? Because we have this unique intergenerational opportunity with one of the pioneers of really cyberculture
Mm-hmm.
and culture in general, which is where we are now. I wanted to ask Ken about how you hooked up with John Shirley.
Okay. Around 1989, early 1989, we were transitioning from Reality Hackers magazine to Mondo 2000, and we wanted our first issue to be the Cyberpunk issue. And so we wanted to get in touch with the Cyberpunk writers. And the first person we contacted was Bruce Sterling. And Bruce said, I'm taking down the neon sign. And he didn't want to do it at first. He was trying to ditch the cyberpunk label at that time. But he said,
Ow.
yeah, but he said, John Shirley will talk to you. And so we got in touch with John Shirley, and he was great. I went out there with St. Jude Milhan, who was our senior editor, who was one of the original hackers, actually. She was the only woman in the book Hackers by Stephen Levy. But anyway, we had a great time interviewing interviewing John, and that's how we met. And he lived pretty close by. I can't remember exactly where, but we were in Berkeley. He was probably about 30 miles away. So he came to all our parties and he participated in interviews that we did immediately. He became part of our thing. We were also already friends with Rudy Rucker, so that one was already in the bag. We knew we could have an interview with Rudy. So John, I remember, came and interviewed uh, Survival Research Labs. I'm forgetting his name now. Mark Pauline. Mark
Yes.
Pauline of Survival Research Labs. So we had a huge gathering, like a gangbang interview of Mark Pauline with, like, I think V. Vale was there, or
Mm,
maybe it was the woman who used to be involved in uh, research. No, Andrea Juno was there.
I'll be right back. But
Okay. All right. I think it's up to us to keep this show going here.
So I gotta ask, because like you're literally just like talking about like people who like their fiction changed. I swear to God, like it changed my brain when I was
Okay.
like high school, back when I was like a librarian before I went crazy.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, dude.
okay,
I
so
I once got written up because I was reading that once. I
right.
worked as a librarian and I decided to hide in the bookshelves
Okay.
while reading Morbid Curiosity.
Oh yes. So you'll appreciate this apropos of V-Veil. Now, of course, our friend uh who Lauren Rhodes, who created Morbid Curiosity magazine, also worked with a few other people like Brian Keene. John Shirley, Brian Hoge, Krista Faust, myself, and Val Vale, and also was involved with modern primitives for research, and she did the layout for modern primitives. So this is really an artifact, and this came out in 2002. We had just done something called Morbid Curiosity Magazine marries the Museum of Death. And I read from my story called Tweak Monsters, which, Lauren said that I really got into her head. And
The notorious Tweak Monster story.
you've read it?
Well, you keep telling me about it. It's literally the warning label of "Don't upset a writer. We'll describe you."
Well, yes. Tweak Monsters, I dedicated it to John Shirley, and not John Shirley, but John Skip. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, he wasn't too happy with that. But
Oh,
anyways, so this was credits, editor and psychopomp, Lauren Rhodes, editorial assistants, Dalton Graham, Mason Jones. Mason Jones did something called subarachnoid space, which she's married to Mason Jones of subarachnoid space, right? The industrial whatever band. Claudius Reich, George V. Neville, Neil, proofreading Claudius Reich, uncredited asides, Lauren Rhodes, layout and design, Automatism Press, and then some shout outs. Much of the artwork here is for sale. Deep gratitude towards blah blah blah, Dana Fredsty, Borderlands books, Hugh LeBlanc, Layla Wendell. Layla Wendell, y'all know who she was, right? Until she went MAGA, right? Layla Wendell, as in, the necrophile and the founder of Westgate, and she did the cover for my book Axis of Evil, a heavy metal horror anthology.
How did she become MAGA?
I don't know, man, but she defriended me on Facebook.
there's
Like,
always a few that get picked off. I can't really quite figure it.
I mean, like, how did Exene become MAGA? How did Sherry Curry become MAGA?
Conspiracy theory is a big entry point.
Okay,
Yeah.
so so could you expand on that?
Oh dear. What did I get myself into? I mean,
Yes.
you
Well,
know, if you believe that uh, the I'm forgetting the word, the injection,
The vaccine.
the vaccine. If you believe
oh,
that, if you believe that's a conspiracy to make everybody sick and control them, then you pretty much already sucked completely into that world, right? I mean, it's the equivalent for somebody who believes that, it's the equivalent of being against the war in Vietnam. It's just like when I was young, it's just obvious. Oh, you know, I mean, once you're in there, believing that there are dark forces trying to control everybody in weird, uh, intimate ways. I mean, that was one of the things about cyberpunk that when you talked about
I
cyberpunk with Bruce Sterling or John Shirley, it was about the intimacy, the upcoming intimacy of technology, and how it was going to go over under the skin and into our psyches. And
They were right.
so yeah, so the MAGA paranoids are uh, being exploited uh, while experiencing the anxiety of being invaded. So, I mean, it's invasion of the body snatchers, but they suspect that everybody else is
Got body snatched.
experiencing invasion of of the body snatchers. So yeah, it's a fight between
Good and evil for them.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah, go ahead.
so as far as conspiracy theories go, I've heard like a bunch of them. At one point I had I call him a quasi cousin because we were initially supposed to be in an arranged marriage together if our parents had our way. He turned out gay, and I was not the least bit interested in him, so that went about as well as orange juice and milk together. And by the time that I was, you know, of a debutante age, I already had gone berserk. So really not good for an upper class family like that. And like he's accused me of not understanding that the lizard people are running the world.
Mhm.
I was like, dude, if this is the biggest priority of the lizard people, then why aren't they just going back to their home planet? I guarantee you they have better things to do.
Oh my gosh, lizard people? Really?
Yes. He also wanted me to understand that Hillary Clinton was apparently a lizard person. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What can you really say about people who start believing those things? Uh, Deliria, I think, pretty much where we are.
I
I
mean,
yeah.
there's a certain point where if your reality is so bad, you will start falling into fantasy just to get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've experienced. Um, when, bad things happened to me when I was a teenager. But the thing is that like you still have to maintain certain amount of grounding in order to be a functional person.
Mm-hmm.
And the type of conspiracy theories that Russians have been using are actually ones which increase the amount of rage that you feel.
Mm.
Now, the interesting thing about this, and there's actually biochemistry behind it, is that when you feel anger, your cortisol increases. Prolonged exposure to cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which is your fight or flight hormone. Everybody knows it causes belly fat. Everybody's seen that Relicore commercial. Um,
Was that the one with that awful guy I worked with at Los Encinas Hospital, Dr. Drew Pinsky? Is that the one? Because I did work with Dr. Drew.
I mean, it might have been Dr. Drew because, like, on the East Coast, I just see you need Relicore
Mm.
Oh my gosh.
whenever Jerry Springer was, talking on
Yeah.
the
Welcome.
daytime TV.
Yeah.
But like cortisol also has another major issue that is very, very obvious now. Long-term exposure to excess amounts of cortisol, which is what happens when you develop a rage addiction or when you become stressed over a large period of time,
Mhm.
decreases your cognitive abilities, sometimes
Yes.
permanently,
Right.
which makes you more susceptible to conspiracy theories.
As well as there's a correlation between low intelligence and being conservative. And there's
Oh,
also the whatever I know is like water wet, but there's also the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? So
mm-hmm.
which a lot of these MAGA have. Now, um, I just wanted to do a little show and tell here because yeah, I've been going through my stuff and I don't I mean I have a lot of extra copies of these. I could send it to both of you that these I could just send it to you. Where are you based, Ken?
I'm in Sausalito.
You're in Sausalito, that's right.
Yeah,
Sausalito.
yeah.
Okay,
By the
so
way, I'm gonna have to head out in about 10 minutes, 3 o'clock.
okay. Okay,
Okay.
so I just wanted to show you guys this a couple of things where I was in um Paula Garan did this thing called Bones of the Children, and this was what in the 90s, and I had a this had some original stuff by by Shirley, and it had a a department from the departments were like Philip Nutman and John Everson, um, and then there was a excerpt from Exquisite Corpse, and I did something called Rattling Good Reads. So it was just basically like good books. So this is a really cool zine that we put out back in the day, Bones of the Children. And then this was a magazine that I contributed to. It's really legendary now. It's called Dark Angel Magazine. And I was just showing this to my friend Tara Vanflower from Lycia. And it kind of blew her mind because it had an interview with Michael Van Portfleet. Um, this was pre, this was pre Tara. And it also had an interview with Swans, which was with Jarbo, of course. So I thought it was pretty badass. And what's her name? Jerry, the creator of this zine, came out to visit me in when I actually visited her in West Hollywood, and we visited the Beverly Center together, and she was just odd and
Hmm.
very loud and very abrasive and very Australian. It's like, oh, whoa, what are you looking at, mate? You know, and so this is like this is the Swans, interview,
Nice. Nice.
right? And it's got Azrael. I think it's got a photo. Anyway, it's got interviews with. See, I just like having these around because, you know, I contributed to all these magazines because I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter or a hater. Well, I'm a fighter for good causes. And this is The Flowers of Doom, my dark poetry collection, and it's got the now famous John Shirley blurb, you know, that begins The Flowers of Doom prove once again that Alexis Johnson is the Baudelaire of our time, the poet of the underground. John Shirley, I mean, I can die happy, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, fucking
That's
A.
the best kind of blurb.
It's the best
Yeah.
blurb ever. And
Yeah.
since then I've been sort of like like, you know, asking how I could possibly live up to that. And you really can't. So I've been trying to be the best Alex S. Johnson I can be. I'm trying to be the Alex S. Johnson of our time. And you know,
Yeah. Just do what you do.
do what I do, right? And
Yeah.
that's what Caitlin or Kiernan, advised me is just build your name. So I think I'm doing okay job,
Hmm.
wet bones, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
right. So there's there's
Beautiful.
our wonderful friend John Shirley. So um okay, so you gotta go, Ken. And so we won't skimp on the squeezing. We'll
Squimp.
squimp, squimp. But so as far as I sent you some potential collaborative lyrics, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty proud of myself. They're kind of they're not cut ups, but they're kind of, I would say, kind of constructed that way. And
Well, I'll see what I can do with them.
okay, cool.
I was
And
thinking about cutting up. I have various stories about burrows, and I was thinking about cutting them up because I kind of don't want to tell them directly, but if I confuse them, then James will get less pissed off at me. So, I
how is he doing, by the way?
don't
Is
know.
he
He doesn't like me, so I don't.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Man. Okay. Well, all right. Yeah, that sounds fucking incredible. Yeah,
And
yeah, that could be
saucy.
fun. Yeah,
that's so
I,
bad.
I I may need to just like actually listen to all these stories. a lot.
Okay. Well, I could send you the actual versions of the stories if you're curious. I've told a few of them in public. I mean, there's only two of them, really. Two, three. All right. Yeah. Anyway.
I'll trade you the
Yeah.
story of my poodle squeezing X.
The poodle
Okay.
is
Yeah.
a
That's
masterpiece.
that's a winner right there. I have to
Right.
have that. All right. Well, I'm going to give you this salute that you do.
Okay.
Is that it? Yeah.
A warm, squeezy hugs
All right.
to
It's been very enjoyable. Let me know
are
when
you
this
serious?
thing is made available. And
Okay.
good meeting you.
Good meeting you too.
Yeah.
I'm a
That
huge
was
fan.
fun.
I
I'm a
love you.
huge fan now too.
Okay.
All right. See you
Take
guys
very good
soon.
care. All right.
Bye
Cool.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Okay. So it's just you and me. Um, if there's anything else you wanted to talk about, we could talk about, we have a number of things actually to talk about. And
We do.
so I had a really weird conversation with her 3 days ago where she accused me of basically killing the movie because I'm disabled and my mom would have to take me to LA. And it's like, and that was a bridge too far for her, as well as, so she completely, and she said that she, contrary to what she had told me, and she said this on the air, right? You remember, you were there. We all witnessed it. She said that this movie was going to be all about me, right? There was no movie. There's no movie. There's no movie. I mean, and then she said that she didn't have any funding for the production, and she blamed me for the film not happening,
Wow.
right?
Okay. Okay. Give me an hour.
Yeah.
I need to think. I'm gonna come up with some shit. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.